In this lesson, we're going to talk about Canadian business international trade agreements.
So we're going to be talking about imports and exports. Imports are products and services brought into a country from another country. Exports are products and services that are sent into a country from another country. An example would be sending wheat to the USA from Canada. Wheat is an export for Canada, as they are sending it into the US, and wheat is an import for the USA, as they're getting it from Canada.
Protectionism is when the government imposes policies designed to protect domestic producers by giving them an advantage over foreign imports. In other words, the government protects the businesses in that country by not allowing other competitors in.
So can you think about why that would be important for a country to ensure that other competitors are not coming in and taking over their consumers? Think about that. So now we're going to talk about tariffs. A tariff is an imported tax on foreign or imported goods. Those are goods coming into Canada. Tariffs artificially raise the price of imports to make Canadian products more competitive and appealing to customers. For example, if a French jam that comes from France carries an 8.5% tariff, if it normally sells for $1.80 per jar, the landed cost and price becomes $1.95, which is more expensive than some of the other Canadian products. The more the government wants to protect an industry, the higher the tariff they'll put on the products in that industry. Next, we will be talking about quotas. A quota is when a country imposes a limit on the amount of goods being imported or exported into Canada. This might be a specific quantity or a dollar value. Quotas limit competition from foreign goods and allow greater control of supply and price. For example, Canada may only let another $10,000 of wheat from other countries to come into Canada for 1 week to make sure that all of the Canadian wheat is sold first. So if other countries aren't bringing in a bunch of wheat, then Canada can make sure that they are able to sell all of their wheat first and then allow exports to come in and sell to local customers. So, some may argue, is protectionism good? Tariffs and quotas are designed to protect domestic industries, so that's good, right? Well, if every country had heavily protectionist policies in place, the flow of international business would grind to a halt or be extremely tough. So some say that protectionism is not always good, and it really isn't. If there's too much protectionism, then certain countries wouldn't be able to get the things that they need that they cannot produce in their own country. So now that we've talked a little bit about protecting different countries, let's talk a little bit more about international business and what it is. So international business is doing business with other countries. There are many benefits to this, including more access to a variety of goods and services, access to cheaper or higher quality goods that can be produced domestically, so that's within the country, and it creates jobs and opportunities for Canadian companies to grow and profit to sell products outside of Canada. Let's face it, we're a big country, but in terms of the amount of people buying products, we can reach billions of other people if we sell outside of Canada, so that's a big benefit. So even though there are some benefits with doing business with other countries, of course there are many challenges as well. So foreign competition can drive Canadian companies out of business, jobs can be moved overseas and lost for Canadians, and foreign goods may be used using unethical practices, such as violations of human rights, poor environmental standards, or the products can just merely be bad quality or harmful to Canadians. So these are some of the things we want to consider when we're bringing in different products and different companies into the country. Do we want to lose jobs? Is it going to make the quality of our business worse? These are some of the challenges that we are faced with international business. So when countries are doing business with each other, there needs to be some trade agreements between the two countries, or between many countries. So we're going to talk about free trade agreements. In general, countries want goods to flow freely for the benefits of their citizens and businesses. Countries sign agreements stating that when they trade with one another, they will not use protectionist policies that we talked about earlier in this lesson. So we're going to talk about Canadian and US trade agreements first, as that is the most trade that Canada does, is with the United States. So the Auto Pact in the 1960s dropped trade barriers for cars, but also required every car sold in Canada, one had to be made in Canada, so it was a one-for-one. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. So NAFTA was an extension of the 1988 Canada to US Free Trade Agreement that included Mexico. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So again, NAFTA is between Canada, the USA, and Mexico. Some points about NAFTA. Some agricultural products are excluded from the agreement, and that's just because different farm products, so animals or foods, could be contaminated and normally are not allowed in certain countries. The NAFTA only applies to goods produced within the borders of the member countries, Canada, US, and Mexico. As a result of NAFTA, this has increased trade with the US by 80% and with Mexico by 100%. Before NAFTA, Canada wasn't trading freely with Mexico. So the World Trade Organization, WTO, is one of the biggest trade organizations in the world. It used to be called the GATT and became the World Trade Organization in 1995. It has over 140 member countries that all want to have international trade with each other. Its rules govern 90% of international trade. So this board, this organization, sets all the rules in place for all the different trade between these countries and ensures that they do it in a peaceful manner. A few other free trade agreements that are important to note is the first one is the European Union, so that's the EU, and that is free trade among all of the European countries. Another one is the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, also known as APEC, and again, that's free trade between those Asian countries. Many countries have a bilateral agreement, which is normally between two different countries. Canada has free trade agreements with Chile, and that's bilateral, two countries, and Israel, for example. Again, that's bilateral between Canada and Israel. So there are thousands of free trade agreements between different countries for different reasons, and that allows international business to take place. So that's the end of this lesson presentation. Make sure to go back and reread anything you didn't fully understand, and move on.